Some stories start with a bang. This one, it begins with a silence. A really deep, heavy silence that has just sunk into the bones of a family and stayed there for almost 40 decades. Today, we're going to unpack this story, a story about a long, painful wait for a final answer. And these are the questions that have just echoed through that silence. Can you imagine? Questions replayed over and over and over again by a family just searching for some kind of meaning that honestly was never going to come. This is the haunting question right at the heart of it all. And this is where that long, long wait finally comes to an end. On this date, in this place, the silence that started with an act of just unimaginable violence is about to be answered by a very different kind of silence, a final, state-sanctioned one. So let's actually start this story at the end. We're inside the death chamber, where a 37-year story is about to find its conclusion. Okay, so picture this. Witnesses are leaning forward as these curtains part, and strapped to a gurney is Richard Barry Randolph. He's 63 years old. He just blinks up at the cold, white lights. So how did he get here? How did we get to this moment? To really understand it, we have to go back, way back. So let's rewind the clock 37 years. We're going back to a quiet little town in Florida where the ordinary, everyday rhythm of life was about to be completely shattered. And the contrast between the two people at the center of this story is it's stark. On one side, you have Minnie McCollum. She's a hardworking convenience store manager known by everyone for her kindness. And on the other side, Richard Randolph, who broke into her home and did something so cruel that it shook even the most seasoned detectives. And you have to understand, this wasn't just a crime against one person. This was a crime against the whole community. All of a sudden, a place that felt safe was just gripped by terror. People were double-checking their locks. There was a predator among them, and nobody knew who it was. But here's the thing. That fear, it didn't actually last all that long. And that's because the investigation moved with incredible speed. In fact, it was about as close to an open and shut case as you could possibly get. I mean, the whole case just snapped together almost instantly. The police picked Randolph up just hours later, and it was on a simple traffic warrant, of all things. But the evidence against him, it was completely overwhelming. Fingerprints, shoe prints, DNA, it was this undeniable trail that led right to his doorstep. And when they questioned him, he denied absolutely nothing. He just sank into this silence that would basically follow him for the next few decades. So Randolph was convicted and sentenced to death way back in 1989. You'd think, okay, case closed. But what came next? It wasn't justice. It was an entire generation of legal limbo that just trapped a family in their grief. The delay was just agonizing. I mean, look at this timeline. From the murder in 88 to the sentence in 89, it seems like justice was moving pretty fast, but then came 36 years of appeals and hearings and legal challenges. I mean, that's a lifetime. Minnie's family members grew old. Some of them even passed away, never getting to see the sentence carried out. Now, the pace of executions in the state had really slowed down for years. But in 2025, Governor Ron DeSantis signed more death warrants than any Florida governor in modern history. And he said, justice delayed is justice denied. For Minnie's family, this wasn't about politics. It was simply the truth of what they had been living through for decades. And that brings us right back to where we started, November 20th, 2025. We're back inside that death chamber, where this whole long story was finally going to get its last line. Witnesses said Randolph seemed pretty calm, not emotional, definitely not remorseful. He was asked the question, "Do you have any final words?" You can imagine the whole room just holding its breath. And his answer? It was just one word. No. A final act of silence. No apology, no explanation. Absolutely nothing. About 2 minutes later, the lethal injection protocol began. Witnesses just watched this very clinical process unfold. His chest rose sharply, his fingers twitched, and then he was completely still. At 6:12 p.m., it was all over. A 37-year-old case was officially closed. The story of the crime itself had finally ended, but for the family, a whole new chapter was just beginning. So what happens after you've waited for nearly 4 decades? What does that final moment actually feel like for the people who were left behind? For Minnie's family, this wasn't a moment for celebration. There was no joy, there was just relief. A weight that had been on their shoulders for almost 40 years was finally lifted. The weight of court dates, of parole hearings, of seeing his face in the news again and again. It was, for them, the ability to just breathe, without that constant shadow hanging over them. You see, this whole story began with a silence, that terrifying silence of an empty home, of a community just gripped by fear, and of a killer who simply refused to speak. And now, all these years later, it ends with a totally different kind of silence. It's the quiet peace that comes with an ending, the end of the appeals, the end of the waiting, the end of a nightmare that lasted a lifetime. For the first time in 37 years, the silence wasn't empty. It was full of peace. Which, I guess, leaves us all with one final thought. After a wait that spans generations, when that final moment finally comes, what do you even call it? Is it justice? Is it closure? Or is it maybe something else? Something quieter, more complex, and maybe only truly known to the people who had to endure that silence for so long?